So, a quick introduction to the African American women poets. We have done very few women poets in the current in our current course, which is rather unfortunate because it is a very important strand of poetry, women's poetry. I think the only one that I can remember is Emily Dickinson. So, we have kind of moved away from women's poetry, but I think it is very important to consider African American women writers, because for African American women writers, now they bring in two strands of discrimination: the gender, because being women, so in a way subordinate to men, so gender discrimination coupled with racial discrimination. African American women writers or African American feminist poetry is a very intense, politically active, very vocal kind of poetry. And I am just introducing you to Gwendolyn Brooks, one of the famous writers, but you can also have a look, or I am sure you have had a look at poetry of some point of time. Toni Morrison, her novels, her books, Alice Munro you might have heard of. So, these are very important and intense African American writers whose works we need to consider, because as I said, while African American male writers like Langston Hughes, Countee Cullen and so on are dealing with the racial discrimination, African American women's poetry is even more politically active, because they are dealing not just with racial discrimination, but also with gender discrimination. So, two strands of discrimination that they feel and rebel against. So, I am going to introduce you to Gwendolyn Brooks and her poetry, 3 poems, very short ones, but very intense and very politically active. So, perhaps you can go on and explore a little bit more of African American women's writing after this. So, we begin with Gwendolyn Brooks. So, that is some introduction about Gwendolyn Brooks. As you can see, she is very much a 20th century writer, right. She passed away in 2000, but her experiences span the almost entire 20th century, except the first decade and a half. So, quite an extensive experience of being an African American woman in America in the 20th century. She was a poet, she was an author, and she was a teacher. She taught in Chicago. Her work mostly deals with lives of ordinary people and their struggles. So, a day-to-day life, day-to-day struggles of ordinary people, mostly of the African American community. And she was the first African American to win the Pulitzer Prize in 1950 for her second book, Annie Allen. Right, and Annie Allen basically explores the life and experiences of a young black girl growing growing into womanhood, growing up in Chicago. She started publishing when she was 13, and nearly by the time she was 16, she had published 75 poems in different magazines, newspapers, and so on. And her style, as you can see, it's a very wide ranging variety of writing, from ballads and sonnets, which, as we discussed, are very structured forms, proper rhyme scheme, proper way of writing, to a free verse, right, free verse, not inhibited by any kind of structure, rhyme scheme or anything like that. So, a wide range of style and very prolific writer. These are some of the quotes, and here you can see her as a person. What are the things, what are the influences of her? She identifies herself as an American, more precisely a person from Chicago. He says, I am an organic Chicagoan. Living there has given me a multiplicity of characters to aspire for. So, Chicago for her is a place that has nurtured her, that has aspired her, where she has seen multiplicity of opportunities and characters to whom she can aspire to. And she says that she hopes to live the rest of her life in that city. And but what is her life in that city? What is her life like? What has been her life like in that city? She says, I lived in a small second floor apartment. At one point of time, she lived in a small second floor apartment at the corner, and I could look first on the one side and then the other, and there was my material. There was my material, she says. So right from her apartment window, she would observe the city, people this way and that became the subject of her poetry. So very intensely American, and more precisely a poetry characters based on everyday, day-to-day life, ordinary life in Chicago, in the Chicago city. So we are going to do this three poems. The first one is The Kitchenette Building, The Kitchenette Building by Gwendolyn Brooks. And the Kitchenette Building is based on her own experiences in Chicago, living in small housing complexes in the very kitchenette buildings that she mentions in the poem. So what is a kitchenette building? Kitchenette building is basically a tiny apartment that was created by dividing up the existing apartment, and so the living space was minimal, and lots of people would live in that. This is kitchenette building. So a big apartment divided into really small minimal housing units. And you can see here how racial discrimination does not happen is not practiced by one individual to another. It is practiced in terms of a system where black or African Americans are relegated or located in this. They cannot buy, the only things that they can afford, the only neighborhood that they can feel comfortable is this cramped down, not a very healthy, cramped up kind of a location, these kitchenette buildings. So lots of people. So here is Gloria furnished kitchenette apartments. So lots of people living together in this these very small apartments. So the African American families in Chicago and around the world, they were, this we see as a kind of a discriminatory housing practice, where the black families got the worst neighborhood, the worst, least cared, the most downtrodden apartments to live. And rather than directly calling out these practices as racist, rather than saying that this is racist, she presents her experiences as an evidence of what she faced as a product, or as a kind of manifestation, as her experiences due to this systemic racism, where African Americans were not really, the good neighborhoods, good houses were not really made available to that community. So throughout this poem, the speaker describes the day-to-day life of a group of people living in these kitchenette apartments in poverty, and she starts with the we. The we that she uses in the poem encompasses everyone in speaker's vicinity, the entire neighborhood, the entire community that has undergone this experience. So it's a kind of not just my experience, but our experiences, right? Our uniform, our kind of our collective experiences. So no one she knows can afford to spend time. She says no one she knows can afford to spend time on dreaming when there are more important things like rent and family needs. So the first stanza, we are things of dry hours and the involuntary plans, grayed in and grey. Dream makes giddy sound, not strong, like rent, feeding a wife, satisfying a man. So the speaker begins by describing herself and those around her as things. We are things of dry hours. So we are not people, we are things of dry hours. It's like the hardship of our life has reduced us to, has deadened our humanity, has deadened our sensitivities, and we have become things. Right? So the people are subject of dry and boring hours, involuntary plans. These are not the plans that they have made, but the plans that they have been forced on them. Right? So this suggests that they don't really have their future, their destiny, their life in their own hands. They are grayed in, she adds, and they are grey. They are controlled by others. They are controlled by a system which is discriminatory. They are controlled by their sufferings. She calls their own life grey. There is a greyness about this entire life that she is living. the entire community. In the speaker's world, the word dream, great, and dream makes a giddy sound, not strong. So dream is like a privilege, it is like excitement, it's a giddy sound, it's light-hearted, but it is not strong, it is divorced from reality, it's not real at all, right? In other words, it's almost like, what is real is how to pay the rent, how to feed your wife, how to feed the children, how to satisfy your man. So these are real, concrete, day-to-day hardships where dreaming is detached from day-to-day life, everyday struggles. Everyday struggle has no space for dreaming. So this is life of those living in kitchenette apartments in Chicago in the 1920s and 1930s. An important thing to note here is these two lines, if you see. Grade in and gray, the line ends here, the full stop is here, the pause is here. Grade in and gray. Dream making a giddy sound, not strong like rent, feeding a wife, satisfying a man. Look at the break here. The thought and the sentence continues. The thought and the sentence continues, but the line, the poetic line, breaks here. The poetic line breaks here. The thought continues, the grammatical sentence continues. What is this practice called? What is this poetic device called? It's called enjambment. E-N-J-A-M-B-M-E-N-T. I think I've explained it to you earlier also. The line, the poetic line has a break, but the thought and the sentence continues. So in a way showing that their life is about their life is fragmented, their life is broken, but this brokenness, this fragmentation is a part of day-to-day life. It's a continuous process. Okay. So the second stanza, moving to the second stanza. In the second stanza of Kitchenette Building, the speaker poses a hypothetical scenario. But could a dream send up through onion fumes its white and violet, fight with fried potatoes and yesterday's garbage ripening in the hall, flutter and sing an aria in these rooms? So she poses a hypothetical question, a hypothetical scenario through these fumes and smells and sounds of onion, fried potatoes, the garbage stinking, ripening in the hall, yesterday's garbage smelling up this stinking smell, sending up this stinking smell in the hall. Can a dream send up something white and violet? Can it rise above these fumes of fried potato, the fumes of onion, the fumes coming from the garbage ripening in the hall? Can it overcome all these sights and smells? Can it flutter? Can it sing an aria? Aria is basically the song, a part of the song. So can it bring beauty? Can it bring lightness? Can it bring music in this heavy stench of garbage, of cooking? Can dreams exist in these surroundings? She doesn't know if dreams, she is speculating, she is thinking, she is wondering whether dreams can survive these strong sights and smells, whether dreams can survive in this environment. But one of the issues with the dreams, the survival of the dreams might be the people themselves. Their lives are so hard, the notion of dream might be hard to accept. Even if we were willing to let it in, what is it here? The dreams, right? So even if we were willing to let it in, had time to warm it, keep it clean, anticipate a message, let it begin. So the problem with dream is not just that the dream cannot survive, it's the hardships that the people face, that they have no space, they have no time to dream, they have no time to let in the dream, they have no time to warm, nurture a dream, keep it, nurture it, right? So Brooks describes the dream, in the next line. She describes it something like a child, or something like a very precocious, something very fragile and very delicate, you let it in, you keep it warm, you keep it clean, anticipate a message, right? And this is the only way to keep dreams from falling apart, to keep the dreams, to help them survive. Is there a time when the dreams could take flight on its own and actually they can become a reality? Let it begin, anticipate a message, let it begin, let the dreams start. Do we have time, do we have space, do we have energy to let these dreams begin? We wonder, she goes back to this we that she used in the first paragraph, we wonder, we are the things of dry hours. She says again here, we wonder. The we who live their lives in tiny apartments, we wonder if it's possible for the dreams to come true. We wonder, but not well, not for a minute. Since number 5 is out of the bathroom now, we think of the lukewarm water, hope to get in it. Right? We wonder, but we don't have really time to go back in life and focus on dreams anymore. We don't have, not for a minute, there is no time, not for a moment. The bathroom is empty. Probably if I get in the queue and get there, I would get warm water. So again, day-to-day hardships, day-to-day lives, day-to-day struggles, overcoming things like dreams. So in a way, the lines bring the reader back to reality. So you have this dream that, she wonders if he can have a dream which can rise above the onion fumes, the smell of frying potato and the stink of garbage. We can let in the dream, we can warm it, we can nurture it, but there is no time to do that. We cannot afford, the people who live in Kitchenette Building cannot afford to do that. So it's in a way a 4 stanza poem separated into 2 sets here, 3 lines in the later part, 4 lines in the earlier 2 stanzas, but it's not really a sonnet. We do not see a regular rhyme pattern or anything. She writes in free verse, although sometimes there might be a rhyme clean, but not really any perfect rhyme pattern. So it just, there is in a way this free verse, this this absence of rhyme and rhythm kind of imitates the chaos of kitchenette buildings that she's talking about. So that is Gwendolyn Brooks' Kitchenette Building, expressing the experience of living in a kitchenette building. She does not talk about racism, she does not talk about discrimination, but she talks about her experiences and experiences of her own community, where their life is so hard, the day-to-day struggles are so hard that there is no time to improve their lot. So the basic right to dream, to plan the future, to make your lot better is denied in this way to the people living in kitchenette buildings. So one of the issues with the dream survival might be that the people themselves, their lives are so hard that the notion of dream might be hard to accept or let in. So even if we were willing to let it in, so the it here is a dream. So even if we were willing to let it in, had time to warm it, keep it very clean, anticipate a message, let it begin. So Brooke kind of expresses a dream in these few lines. He describes the dream as something fragile, a very fragile creature, almost like a child or a very delicate bird. So something that has to be cared for, something that has to be nurtured, kept clean, warmed, and this is the only way to keep the dream from falling apart. So is it possible that they would be able to let such kind of dreaming begin? Is there a time when such dream could take a flight and become a reality? So that is what the poet wonders, can we let it begin? And in the next stanza she goes back to we wonder. Just like earlier on she had said, we are the things of dry hours, we were willing to let it in. Again, we wonder. We wonder if it is possible. We wonder, but not well, not for the minute. Since number 5 is out of the bathroom now, we think of lukewarm water and hope oh, I'm sorry, but I'll try to change this. Right, so we think of lukewarm water and hope to get in it, right. So even if there was a dream, it is so difficult to nurture it. The hardships, the day-to-day reality, right, the day-to-day fight for existence, the day-to-day fight for everyday convenience, basic human rights, just takes away this whole vision of future, this whole vision of a dream. So that's it. This is real life. This is real life that comes into focus, and that matters at the moment. That there is a bathroom, you've got to go to the bathroom, and you hope that there is still some warm water, and you hope to get in it. So these lines bring the readers back to reality. The dreams are something that this speaker and those that she lives with cannot afford. Right? So structure of Kitchenette Building by Gwendolyn Brooks, it's a 4-stanza poem separated into 2 sets. Two sets. The first set of 4 lines in the first 2 paragraphs, and the next set of 3 lines in the later 2 paragraphs. So there is no real rhyme pattern or rhythm, as if this kind of there is no pattern, there is no structure, there is no discipline or anything. This chaos imitates the lives of the people living in the Kitchenette Building. And she talks about, as you can see, she does not really talk about discrimination. She does not really talk about she does not talk about racism that she's facing. She just expresses the experiences of African American community as it lives through the Kitchenette Buildings, faces these hardships, is denied the right to dream or envision a better future, and their everyday struggles. So not really a race poem about opposition to racism, but still in a way showing the lives that African American community lives, and putting in front of us the unfairness, the hardships of that life.